Welcome into a special edition of Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens, joined by Locked On Bama's Jimmy Stein. The number one overall seed goes down at this point. Not going to call it too early, but it looks like we might not have any number one seeds in the Elite Eight. I talked to your co-host earlier this week. He said complacency was probably the biggest barrier that Alabama might be facing. Do you feel like that's what happened today?
Not really. First of all, I want to give San Diego State a lot of credit. That's an elite defensive basketball team. I think when you look at some of the numbers for Alabama, those aren't typical numbers you see from Alabama's offense. You got to credit San Diego State with a great plan. They executed the plan. They're very, very good defensively. Now, I think Alabama was 3 of 27 3-point shooting and turned over the ball. I was asked earlier this week, Kai, that, hey, look, if Alabama loses, why did they lose? And my answer was because they turned over the ball and they didn't shoot well. And that's what happened. Now, again, credit San Diego State with that.
Obviously, there was some foul trouble in the beginning. San Diego State really kind of dictated the pace for the first half. Alabama came out, felt like the tides had turned a little bit right after halftime. Why weren't they able to continue to do that? Did San Diego State adjust to them, or did you feel like they just weren't hitting shots at that point?
I think not hitting shots. And, it's not easy. Brandon Miller has a groin issue. And Nate Oats said before the game on the broadcast, he was around 80%. I think when you look back into Alabama's 3 NCAA tournament games, Brandon Miller, who may be the best player in the country or certainly on the short list, certainly the best freshman, Brandon Miller had 0 points against Texas A&M Corpus Christi in the opener. I think he was 3 of 19 shooting in this game. That has to be 2 of the 3 worst offensive games of the year from Brandon. Maybe it's the groin. Maybe he just wasn't shooting it well. Maybe it's San Diego State. But when you're number one seed and your best player basically plays 2 of his worst games of the year in the NCAA tournament, it could be a short stay for you. I do think Miller's lack of consistency in scoring hurt. And Javon Quinterly, who had been outstanding getting Alabama to this point, Quinterly also very poor tonight. Just wasn't his night. Didn't shoot it well. Turned it over too many times. Had a couple of frustration fouls. And hey, your best players have to play their best in the biggest games, and that just didn't happen for Alabama tonight.
You touched on it a little bit. San Diego State really looked like they were frustrating them. Like it looked like they were just getting mad about certain things and kind of letting that get in their heads and get out of their own game. Were you surprised that they were able to do that so successfully against a team that's had so much success?
Yeah, big time. Because Alabama, one of their great traits has been poised. A team that didn't get rattled very much seemed very rattled. Maybe it was the stage. One thing, again, I probably didn't take into account enough. It really stood out to me just when TBS showed the opening, the starting lineups. And it reminded me how veteran the San Diego State team is. I think they had 4 seniors and a junior in their starting lineup. Alabama starts Brandon Miller, a freshman, Noah Clowney, a freshman. Rylan Griffin and Jaden Bradley are critical players off the bench, freshmen. Charles Bediako, the center, a second-year player. Mark Sears, he's a junior, but he's a transfer from the MAC, from Ohio University. He hasn't played a lot of games on big stages. I think Alabama's inexperience, which hadn't been a problem, seemed to maybe be a big problem at the end. They were rattled. And again, I credit San Diego State's defense for that.
How do you feel Nate Oats did with the situation? Obviously, Brandon Miller had the foul problems, chose to play him, which was probably the right move, I think, was the right move. But then, Brandon Miller did struggle, kind of didn't want to pick up that third foul. And then towards the end, when they were choosing to foul, like the ways they were trying to do, was there any coaching things that you thought maybe Nate could have done differently, or just kind of looking back on it?
Yeah, looking back on it, the Monday morning quarterback part of it, maybe some timeouts. San Diego State had a couple of really nice runs. I think it was even 27-11 at that point. Alabama only called 1 timeout throughout that whole stretch. Maybe some additional timeouts to reset, calm down the guys. Again, they sort of lost their poise, and that hadn't been something we'd seen all year long. But, San Diego State is a good team. I think whoever they play Sunday is in for a pretty tough matchup on one end of the floor. Also seemed as San Diego State gained confidence, the closer they got to the win, the better they played on offense. Maybe they hadn't hit a lot of shots all night either. They really did down the stretch. But again, Alabama's not going to win too many games when they're 3 of 27 3-point shooting and turn over the ball as many times they did. Ultimately, it was those two things, I think, that cost Alabama this game.
You mentioned this is a very young team. Obviously, Brandon Miller, these could be lottery picks. Like, what do you expect this team to look like next year? Has anybody said anything so far in terms of who may or may not be coming back?
Well, there's two true seniors that will be out of eligibility, Dom Welch and Noah Gurley, who are bench players. They'll be gone. The real questions are about three players, Brandon Miller, Noah Clowney, and Javon Quinterly. Brandon is almost certain to leave based on where he's projected to go in the draft. He would be foolish not to. I don't think anyone at Alabama expects Brandon back. Noah Clowney is often projected in NBA first rounds. My guess is you'll see Noah Clowney enter the draft process and based on feedback, make a decision about staying or going. Javon Quinterly, real interesting, probably not a great NBA prospect, to be honest. I don't know that he has an NBA future. He certainly has a pro basketball future. The thing with Javon is he's been in college for so long. He's gone through a COVID year, through a redshirt year when he first transferred to Alabama. Javon, if he returns, will turn 25 years old next year during the season. I think with his age, he might be ready just to give pro basketball a shot, even if that means overseas, even if that means the G League. So really it's those guys. I think Brandon Miller is certainly gone. Noah Clowney and Javon Quinterly are possible returns. If all three leave, you can expect Alabama to be busy in the portal this spring.
Absolutely. What kind of guys is Nate Oats going to look for in that portal? Because I think safe to say we're probably going to have a few holes to a couple of spots to fill there.
Probably so. I think power forward is one, replacing Noah Clowney actually at that 4 spot, I think would be kind of the biggest hole in the lineup. So I think looking for a stretch 4 or just a normal power 4, just a big scorer inside would be number 1. And number 2, just kind of a best available player if they need 2 guys. And they might, if JQ and Clowney and Miller all leave, they'll need 2 from the portal at the least. And that's assuming everyone else comes back. But that's the feeling as of today. Alabama losing 2 coaches, though, 2 assistant coaches. Charlie Henry, he's going to be the new head coach at Georgia Southern. Brian Hodgson's going to be the new head coach at Arkansas State. Sometimes you see bench players leave with an assistant where they know they'll be kind of the guy at the new place. That's something that could happen, but I don't anticipate it happening.
All right, Jimmy, thank you for joining us. We know you'll have more on Locked On Bama in terms of the end of the season for them. Locked On College Basketball has everything else for you, including all these bracket breakdowns, and all of this is a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.